Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. Usual messages or reminders, I guess that's what we'll call them. You can like and follow the Leather Elves on Facebook. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Instagram. So, lots of different ways to get the information that we're providing for you guys. We are gearing up for the Rockstar Rescue Tour 2025. Those are all our amazing sponsors there on the bottom. We really want to thank all of them for helping us make the tour possible. This is the last week to order the rescue boxes for the tour. The elves, Mark and I, are going to have to be working our fingers to the bone to get toys made for all the rescues. We're visiting 25 rescues on the tour. And just so you guys know, we're also visiting we're visiting all of our sponsors, not all of them, several of our sponsors. But we will be visiting Bird Fever in Indianapolis and doing a trivia event there. And we will also be visiting In a Pickle Parrot Shop in Ohio, and we will be doing a trivia event there. So lots going on. We're really gearing up, getting everything all set to go. So tonight, well, somebody, I think it was Lori, said happy Friday the 13th. And so I think it's lucky Friday the 13th because I'm pretty lucky to have my guest with me tonight. This is someone who is legendary in aviculture. He's got so much information. I just want to jump right to it. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you guys Dick Schroeder. Hey, Dick, how are you?
Good evening.
Hello.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to read your bio. I probably should have put my glasses on because it's really little print. Either that or I'm just getting significantly older. I'm not sure which. So Dick's avicultural adventures began in the 1970s in Los Angeles. And like so many, he started with finches, soon moved to lovebirds. Then it was all downhill from there. Known early in the hobby for his work with lories, sometimes referred to as soft-bill parrots. Oh, my husband just brought me my glasses. Thank you. He knows how blonde I actually am.
Oh, I heard you.
There we go. All right. Sometimes referred to as soft-bill parrots. It was only natural that he progressed into the world of real soft-bills. Over the years, Dick has bred numerous species of birds, including such rarities as red-vented cockatoo, as well as Amazons and African greys, macaws, and cockatoos. He received the AFA First Breeding Award for the fairy lorikeet in 1989. During this period, he also raised numerous ballyminas, double-eyed fig parrots, and Philippine hanging parrots. Dick has written avicultural articles for numerous publications over the past nearly 50 years, to include Watchbird, Bird World, Birds USA, the ASA Bulletin, plus a monthly column for Bird Talk for over 20 years. He has served in various positions for several clubs, including 2 terms as president of ASA. He is very proud of his Avicultural Lifetime Excellence Award presented by ASA in 2009, as well as his honorary lifetime membership awarded in 1993 by ASA. Dick was a founding member of the International Softbill Society, a director for the American Lory Society, a MAP board member, and is currently a professional level member of the ZAA, Zoological Association of America. Dick and his wife Ricky include in their avian collection a number of hornbill species, kookaburras, various softbills, and a pair of African greys, his only seed eaters, for their sound effects. Okay, so I think the whole hour went by. You're that impressive. So we've got a lot of different people from different parts of aviculture listening tonight. We've got some we've got some breeders, we've got some companion parrot owners, we've got some just enthusiasts. So Dick, it's been a long career. We're not going to mince words here. It's been quite a while.
Yeah.
So let's go way, way back. What's your first avian memory?
Well, as a kid, I used to put peanuts out, and my mother encouraged me with animals. Now I was allowed about the only kid on the block allowed to keep snakes in the garage. And I had a kestrel that was injured. I don't know what, but I had to feed him, but I had mice to feed the snake, so I had food for the kestrel.
There
First
you go.
bird I actually owned, paid for, we now own, I think, 13 or 14, and an older kid in the neighborhood had caught him up in Baldwin Hills in the oil field, and I think I gave him $5 for it, and so I had a burrowing owl for a while.
That's not something you hear. Having a burrowing owl isn't the normal pet for most kids.
Oh yeah, that's true. I eventually took him out and turned him loose, and he caught him in the place I go to catch my snake. So it was more trouble than it was worth. So I turned him loose.
Oh. So how did this whole thing start? This amazing career in aviculture?
Oh, when I was married, my first wife, Maureen, we had 3 sons, and the youngest son had an interest. We had a dry cleaner. We had a pair of zebra finches on the counter, and Brett was always enthralled by the zebra finches. And well, maybe we'll get a pair of zebra finches, and of course, a pair turned into several pairs. And we had a lot just north of LAX and Westchester. I had room. I don't know. I had more room for, but I went from finches then to lovebirds and Australian parakeets, and probably around there sometime I got a pair of Toco toucans I bred and a pair of keelbill toucans. So, easy, and I was able to trade or sell everything I raised. So, it wasn't part of my livelihood. It was just that's a hobby, as it is today. And it just evolved as parrots turned out to be pretty easy to breed, so looking for challenges.
There you go. So, I think people forget. You and I were talking a little bit before we went live that people forget that aviculture isn't just parrots. There's so much
Far
more.
from it.
So where did this kind of love affair with hornbills, where did that come from?
Well, I started off with when things at Long Beach were all toucans and nericeries and toucanettes, but they have their diet's pretty critical. Get sensitive to iron in the diet, so hornbills are not the African ones, and so I just went from, I don't know how I happened to get my first pair of hornbills. I don't even remember where I got them. Probably out of a quarantine station in L.A. Vonders I had, I think, originally. But anyway, hornbills presented a challenge. And of course, hornbills are a bigger challenge yet because you have room for them. And unlike parrots, the nest box for the ground hornbills is 8 feet tall and 2 feet square. And so and I've gone through 3 of them in 20 years because they tear them apart. Also got to have patience to work with them. I had the first pair of ground hornbills, that'd be blobs. I had them 10 years before I saw an egg. And I got a second pair along the way. I had them 10 years, and I lost the original hen, Blob's mother. And so I replaced her with the hen from the second pair that had shipped the male off to a zoo in Florida. And just now they finally went nest. This year they were been together probably a year. And I think I told you early on when we talked about doing this, I had eggs at the time. Well, that lasted all of 2 weeks. The neighbor next door had changed, and no thanks. So I got off the nest and I set up the incubator to pull the egg. We're already gone. So much for that.
Yeah, and I mean
kind of how things go sometimes.
Well, and it does, and I think that's something that people need to hear is that it's not just multiple clutching, every year, and it's not something that is a given, I guess. It's not something that just you can count on. You're going to get so many offspring every single year, and you can force them to do that. It doesn't work that way, right?
No, it doesn't. Nope, nope. In fact, I had Vonderdeck decks. I was sure I had bees in the nest. The female was sealed in like they do, and I didn't bother looking at the inspection drawer. They've always been good breeders, and the hen didn't break out like she's supposed to. For a couple, she breaks out. They go back to feeding the bees to the two of them. They seal the box back up. When she didn't come out, open the inspection door, and there was nothing in it. So somewhere along there wasn't even an egg. So she spent the whole time in there like she's supposed to, but for no. So that happens sometimes. I have a friend this year had the same thing happen to her. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that we have a mutual friend, and I think that's who you're referring to, and it is part of the journey.
Yes.
It's not a guarantee, and you can do everything quote unquote right, but it doesn't always work out. Yeah, I think.
And in the wild, the ground hornbills, the wild ground hornbills, a pair generally produces one chick every 9 years. That's why they're pretty scarce.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not,
I've been lucky enough to raise 18 of them.
I think Claudia says that would be her, and it is Claudia. And I wasn't going to share, but you've shared, so thank you. It's all about transparency, right? And I think when people are looking at getting into it would be you. But I think when people are looking at getting into aviculture, they need to know that it's science. And there's some luck involved, and it's not, this quick turnover that, a lot of people who are on the other side of animal welfare than we are, people who are animal rights, really think that, we're turning over the nests every, couple of months, and but that's not what it's about,
Yep.
Yeah. But so go ahead.
No, things I was quite successful with years ago, you can't even find them anymore.
Right.
The fairy lorikeets. I bred fairy lorikeets, the third generation, but find one today, you can't.
No. And red bents are not as prevalent as they had been, and I was lucky enough to see a double-eyed fig parrot when I was in Australia, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, this is a pet, and it's pretty common." I don't think I've ever seen one in the United States in the pet trade.
Well, I've raised two species, double-eyed fig parrots and Desmaris fig parrots.
Okay.
They were a challenge, and they got the double eyes to breed by hanging a staghorn fern in the aviary, and they hollowed into the staghorn fern just like they would in the wild.
Uh-huh. And I think that brings up another point too, that, with different species, different types of birds, it's not just throw up the nest box and it's going to be great. You have to look at what they come from, what their environment is. So you mentioned the size of the nest box for the ground hornbills. Tell us about what we're seeing here.
That's a nest box for Jackson hornbills, which are similar to a Viking, and it's about 12 inches square and probably 30 inches tall. And the entrance hole is toward the bottom of the box because the female seals the box up with mud, and she's sealed in there on the eggs, and the male just feeds her through that slit you see. And she stays in there until the chicks are pretty much feathered up and breaks the mud out. Then they seal it back up again with the chicks inside. Then she and the male both feed her in that slit. And that's almost all the hornbills work, except for ground hornbills. They're the only ones that don't into they nest in a hollow log if they have them, but they don't seal it.
Okay.
Anyway, so you have an inspection, or you don't even know what's going on inside the nest. You have no clue. But nowadays, some people putting cameras in. That's good. But a camera for a ground hornbill would be something to play with. Wouldn't
It's
last for
enrichment.
very long.
The so so they mud up the female muds herself in,
She's
and then
sealed
you
inside.
okay, and then you said she comes
And
out.
male feeds her inside, and after the chicks hatch, continues there for another couple of weeks, and then
Mhm.
she breaks out, and they seal it back up again. Then both of them are outside feeding the chicks, and when the chicks get able to fly, they break out, and they're all out flying around together.
It's interesting that the chicks stay in there by themselves. Like that's kind of surprising, but it makes sense when you think about predators and um,
That's
so.
the whole purpose. If you're a snake trying to go in that hole there, you're going to be in trouble.
Mhm.
So,
Um,
and it's down at the bottom
so
of the box. The nest box is amazing clean. The female gates out through the slit, and in fact, with enough force, it goes about 6 feet across. It hits a wire on the other side. But
wow.
so the nest boxes, the shavings, the leaves and stuff they put in there, it's pretty clean nest.
Mhm. So the now you was it the ground hornbills that have the really huge nest?
Right. I struggled at first trying to figure out what to breed them in. I knew of somebody, a friend here in California. She had a pair that she bred, and she had a hollow oak tree stump that was about 6 feet tall. Her
Uh-huh.
boyfriend, I know, he brought it over in his truck and put it in the aviary, and so they nested in that. But anybody else I could find, somebody else had them nest in those plastic dog glues, like the dogs for a dog to get out of the weather in. And I was at a conference in Toronto, and a fellow I was talking with, he's from South Africa, uh, and all he raises is ground hornbills. And so, what he did, and he emailed me his dimensions for his nest box. So I copied that per his instructions, and first I had an egg. That egg was blob. So then I've had to remake them over and over again. They just keep hammering on things.
Mhm.
If they have something to do, they need entertainment. Except for my ravens, they're the smartest birds I've ever had.
Yeah. So, okay, so what do you do? So my, passion is enrichment with whatever. I mean, I've worked with all different kinds of birds, not just parrots. And what kind of things do they do you provide for them as far as enrichment or to just keep them busy?
Oh, yeah, they get provided. Right now, they have wicker basket that's probably 2 feet in diameter and 2 tall, and
Uh,
they're little by little tearing the basket apart. At Halloween, we put the pumpkin off the front porch in there, and they make pumpkin pudding out of it, and even give them like a empty 5-gallon plastic can from the nursery. You can't believe how they carry that thing up out those plastic nursery cans. So yeah, they
wow.
get and all the dog toys. But when the dog toy gets used, not dogs aren't using it anymore. It gets kind of torn up and throw it in the hornbill flight, and another toy again.
So do they destroy things? Do they if is it just about the tearing things apart?
Yeah, they destroy things. Before I when I moved from Fallbrook to here, that's what 2 years ago, 23 years ago. Um, when Fallbrook, when I had them, they were in a pen that had crown cranes in it, so it was quite large, and it was just covered with game bird netting, the hole in the middle. But before I moved here, I still kept the house when we moved to here, and I landscaped the whole aviary is 25 feet square and feet high, and I was in it, and I had flax planted, and it was beautiful, like a zoo exhibit. In about 3 weeks, and it looked like the desert.
I
So
I
it's useless, useless plant anything in a ground hornbill flight.
uh I remember the AZA had, no, I'm sorry, AZAC had a joint conference with the Horticulturist Society. And it was, everybody's talking about, oh, my animals love this and my birds love that. And the horticulture guys were kind of all standing around looking angry because they put so much work into planting things in the enclosures and the animals were loving it, but they were destroying it as well. So yeah, there are a lot of
Yep.
animals like that landscaping is not their thing. Um, but do they? I mean, so they play with dog toys, things like Kongs, and do they? Okay, foraging. Do they do a lot of foraging?
Yes, the well, when I moved Blob, I guess I moved him from where he used to be down to another aviary by himself, and it has
Uh-huh.
in it. Grass had grown in it. There's no grass anymore. He just digs, he keeps hammering the ground looking for grubs or crickets or whatever he can find. So
TJ says
that thing up.
they just. TJ says they just tear things up to keep you busy.
That's a fact. You're right, TJ.
So I remember I was at a facility and we were talking about enrichment. And one of the things they had done was for their hornbills was they had planted just some, like wildflowers and things like that. And they used to walk the hornbills through that pathway. And they were just, I mean, it looked like a child bending over and smelling the flowers and just pulling them up. Um, is there what's their olfactory system like?
I think it's more sensual, but it's eyes seeing things more than sniff things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a good friend here in Valley Center. You may know her, Hillary Hankey. She does
Mm-hmm.
training, free flight, and
Yep.
Hillary has one of my babies. I've been up to her place, take walks with Kipling. No, yeah, Kipling. Take walks with him when you walk with her property there, and it's quite extensive. And he'll walk just like a dog right beside you, and then all of a sudden he'll take off and fly ahead of you and land in a tree, or he chases lizards through, and he's just like having a dog that flies.
Right.
He's a
And I
pretty good
think
guy.
that's the thing, doing, with any animal that's in human care, giving it that, expanding its environment as much as you can. Whether it's, just changing up the scenery, changing up the environment in an enclosure, or actually taking them out like Hillary does. And, I think that's really important. Carrie Ellen said coconuts are great. Do you give them coconuts?
I haven't, but I be worth trying. Sure,
Yeah, I think so.
it'd
I
take a
think,
while to work on one of those.
so there's the fiber on the outside, and then, breaking through the shell, I think would probably be, the next mission for
Right?
them.
Yeah,
But so Michelle says she'd love to hear more about the smart raven.
they're African white-necked ravens, and they breed when they feel like it. So I don't raise very many of them.
Hmm.
Most times I find the eggs in the water dish, occasionally a chick in the water dish.
Yeah.
But I had to show some of their smarts there. I had well, you've probably seen the toys for the parrots, or they got a cylinder. It's got peanut-shaped cutouts in it. You're supposed to put it hanging on a chain for the parrots to get the tree down. Well, I put pinky mice in one and hung it on it was probably a 30-inch, 3-foot long chain on a cable. And the male raven was hand fed, so he's used to people. He's not afraid of people. In fact, it's dangerous when you want to take a chick out of his nest. But he would pull up on the chain and put his foot on it, and reach down and grab the chain further down, pull it up, put on it,
Mhm.
reach down and pull it up, and then get it all the way top where it was almost laying on the perch, and then he'd slip out of his grip. Then it'd drop down to the bottom again. So he'd go through all that trouble, pull it up, pull it. He tried that 3 or 4 times, and he finally, the hell with it, just shook the shit out of it. They had pinky mice flying everywhere, and then he went down on the ground and picked them up.
There you go. I I have to say, working with crows and ravens is one of my favorite things to do because it's just they challenge you. You know, if you're doing a training like a flight training and it's an A to B that you're asking for, they're at back at C by the time you've figured out, oh wait a minute, I asked for an A to B, they're over there. And as far as keeping them engaged, I think that's, puzzles, things like that. The dog puzzle feeders are great for them. The ones where they have to open things and get things out. And
Yep.
but
Yep.
but they are so smart, so
They're currently
wonderfully
working. We we have 2 cats, and we have a couple of those cat trunks, different levels of
yeah.
place for the cats to climb up. We recently replaced them, so I took the older one, took it and put it in the raven cage. Not only peeled the carpeting off of it, the cardboard cylinders where the rope was wrapped around, longer wrapped around it, the cardboard cylinders are all torn off. So they're little dismantling this.
I worked
Gives them something to do.
Oh yeah, I worked with a raven at one point, and his name was Loki, of course, right? I mean, that's the common corvid name, and he had a doghouse in his enclosure, and he would go in and out, and we kept that clean, and he would also talk to the eagles that were down below. He would call them by name, and then one day I'm like, okay, it's time for a thorough cleaning, and I pulled the doghouse out, which didn't happen as frequently as it should have. And he had cached everything in there. There were, some pieces of mice, some, treats that people had given him, people's keys, but it was all back there. So it kind of gave us the heads up that we needed to do that more often. But yeah, loved working with him.
Well, the male raven is as tame as a blob is. So, and both of them have the same trick. Blob will stick his beak through the wire, which is 1 inch by 2 inch wire, out as far as you can, and the dog will grab the end of it and shake it, and Blob will pull it back out. They're playing with it. Well, the rest is the same thing, but he gets on the floor of the cage and he barks like the dog. So that attracts the dog. He sticks his beak out. The dog comes running over and he grabs the raven's beak, but just before he grabs it, the raven pulls it back and slaps him in the nose, just spears him in the nose. And the dog, he must have done it 100 times. The dog still hadn't figured it out.
We had a crow and a raven that were side by side, and they used to barter. They would, trade things like, okay, I'll give you this stick if and then the rock would come through, and it was like, okay. And they definitely bartered. So Douglas asks, what do you feed hornbills?
Well, somewhere Nick's got a picture. There you are. That's the ground hornbill's diet. They're 100% carnivorous. I've never seen fruit. Even when they give a pumpkin to tear up, I don't think they eat it. The Asian ones are much more frugivorous. The little guy African ones, the Vakans and African gray hornbills, red bills that I have, they'll eat some papaya and blueberries and grapes and stuff, but not in any great quantity. They're more happy with crickets and mealworms. That's beef heart in there with it, shredded beef heart. They like that.
It's so funny working with people that don't work with carnivorous birds. They're like, oh, but those are other birds. That's it's cannibalism. No, it's really not. So that's tasty. So there you go.
He's got a rat.
Nice.
Blob with the rat.
So will he eat the whole thing, or will he just take out the organs and?
Well, that plate that was shown there was for a pair of them for the day.
Okay.
So Bob would get half of that, and he also likes his rattles, catches those once in a while. And he eats them.
Yeah, there we go.
There he is, right there with the rattlesnake.
So is it a stab and grab?
Puff at her. He caught it, and I'm glad he got dogs did.
Yeah.
It's expensive. You have to take the dog to the vet. No, he ate it after he walks around parading around with it for a couple hours. He eats it.
So that's a behavior that you see a lot from hornbills. The kind of carry stuff around and look. Is it showing off for a mate? Is it just what is that behavior for?
It's probably both those things. They have what they call a bolus that's part food and part nest material. Be like dry grass and maybe a mouse or something. Well, he'll walk around with that when he's trying to attract the mate, and actually he'll fly up to the nest box with it and just rattle his beak back and forth the opening there, so she's looking at what he's doing.
Mhm.
And then before they mate, they probably a week or so. And then when she's in the nest, when he brings her food, he'll sometimes bring new nest material. So that's part of their habit. They're always going to seem
Yeah.
to have something in their beak.
Hmm. So I know all of our female viewers tonight are starting to get jealous about those eyelashes. So what are the eyelashes? So is it just so where do they live, most
It
of
keeps
them?
the dust. The ground live south of the Sahara, Africa, from coast to coast, and the Abyssinian ones live north of in the northern part of Africa. But it keeps the dust
Mhm.
out of their eyes. They spend all their time walking on the ground looking for food, and can be breezy, I guess, and so it filters out the dust.
Makes sense. But yeah, I've always been fascinated. We were talking before that, most of the hornbills I've known over the years have had names like Maybelline. Um, yeah, look at those. So TJ says he worked
Yep.
with a great Indian hornbill that would always proudly show him the lizard he had spent the morning beating against his perches. There you go. Look what I got. So are ground hornbills your favorite, Dick, or do you have a favorite?
That's tough. Yeah, that's call. When I had lorries, Stella lorries were my favorite. And when I was raising mine, the Valley miners were my favorite. But yeah, I'd say probably, yeah, they probably are. Corvids, I love the corvid, magpie jays and all that stuff. And the ravens are certainly one. But I think between the challenge and the personality, the ground hornbills are the favorite.
Mhm. So you mentioned, that Hillary has one of your babies. What kind of training have people done with hornbills?
Oh, I've got this, my hornbill talk that I've given has pictures of Jeff Wall in Las Vegas, the Birdman he's called. He has one and he frees it, from one point to his arm and that type of thing. I've seen him on some people have had him on TV talk shows.
Mhm.
Fellow had one I sold to in New York, and he was on one of the late night talks with it. And uh, Hillary's has got probably it just she flies loose. She crown cranes fly loose, so she's you know
That's
that walks with you, it flies away when it wants to, and comes back. And I'd be scared to death to go off there and coyote's going to get him or something. But
yeah. But it's Hillary's a great trainer, and it's definitely a challenge. So how food motivated are they? So if someone was going to do training with a hornbill, is food that reinforcement, or is it something else?
yeah, oh yeah, they'd do anything for a mouse.
All
You
right.
have to have a pile
Um,
of dead mice.
there you go. So aviary design, tall, or what kind of aviary are we talking about? Is it different? It's different depending on the species.
For my larger hornbills, I have three large aviaries. The one that Blob hatched in and lived father for lots of years. It's 25 feet square and 10 feet high. The one that Blob is in now, which my other pair of hornbills was in, hornbills, 16 feet wide and 40 feet long and about 12 feet high. And then I have another one that's 20, it had silvery cheeks in it. It's 25 feet by 25 feet by 15 feet high. that's got African gray hornbills in it now. So they have
So
lots
do
of
they
room. And my Vanderdeckens have that.
do they
Some of
utilize
the
all
crown
the
hornbills
height?
spend part of their time on the ground.
Yeah.
They do a lot of walking, but they certainly fly. They fly from 25 feet from one to the other all the time. So
Hmm. Okay.
the
Um,
the
and go ahead.
no, I was going to say that the smaller species, the Vanderdeckens and the red bills, and those guys, they're in 6 feet by 12 feet, and that's fine for them. They don't
Mhm.
fly back and forth. And,
Right.
and those guys, you can even have plants in it. They don't tear the plants up.
Well, that's cool. Um, so, what's the biggest challenge that you have faced working with hornbills?
Patience,
Yeah.
having patience. When you got a pair of years and try to learn all you can about them, you still haven't seen an egg. It takes
Yeah. Yeah. That would be a lot of patience. So, as far as your relationship with it, do you have a relationship with them? Because for years people used to tell me you can't give breeder birds enrichment. You can't interact with breeder birds at all. Um, is that the same mindset for these guys?
no, not necessarily at all. Uh, I have African grays right now. They're fed. They won't breed for anybody. They don't even know they're a bird. But
Yeah.
that's only parrots I have. But the most of the wild caught stuff just kind of stays away from you. And they're not necessarily afraid of you or anything. And when you walk in and set the food dish down on the moon, that you don't get 2 feet away, and the males are picking mealworms out of it. So,
Right.
and I'm pretty sure that the ones that are hand fed, didn't hand feed. Some of the zoos wanted them parent raised, so someone went to the zoo parent raised. But the hand fed ones, like Bob, was hand fed until he started eating on his own. I put him right back in the cage with his father and stood
Mhm.
there waited to see what was going to happen. First thing the father did is go find some food and try to feed him. So I see this might work out all right. So over the period of time, by the time he was 6 years old, he was still in there with his father. The father showed him how to bring nest material to the nest, showed him to feed the female in the nest, and by the time the fifth or sixth subsequent chick was born, Blob was doing all the work. The old man was just sitting back. But Blob would feed the hen, and he would feed the other chicks in the nest. So he learned well. So he maintained his relationship with people, but he still did what a hornbill's supposed to do. So
Huh.
I don't know. I can't guarantee everyone to be that way, but he did.
Right. That's interesting.
In fact, he
Yeah.
would still be in there with
Yeah.
them. His stepmother, the one I exchanged for his deceased mother. Um, they were fine for 8 or 9 months, all three of them together. Then all of a sudden, she turned on him and tried him twice.
Huh.
So, well, he's 16 years old now, so I guess she thinks a teenager ought to be out on his own. That's why he's out on his own.
There you go. So, which brings up a point. Are they flock or pairs? In the wild, how do they live?
They live in groups of 2 to 12 birds. And if there's a
Mhm.
single bird around, it's just usually a single female to find her own territory. And the young males stay only the dominant pair breeds. So all the rest
Okay.
of the group are generally single males, and after they reach a certain age, they run them off to go start their own group somewhere else. And the
So,
biggest issue is if they lay 2 eggs, they
no, go ahead.
lay typically they'll lay two eggs, but they're laying 3 to 5 days apart. So the second chick never survives.
Huh.
I had pictured somewhere. Anyway, they hatch at about 60 grams, and by 5 days old, they're 90 to 100 grams. So the one chick's almost twice the size of the one that just hatched. So
Mhm.
the parents, the first chick, and the other guy probably becomes part of the food. So
Yeah.
when I check the eggs, I typically I'll pull the first chick and let the parents raise the second chick, or at least for a point. And
Mhm.
in there in Africa, Mabua, the conservation group there, they pulled this. I think they pulled the first chick out of each clutch, and they raise them and keep them in a holding until they're smart enough to be on their own out in the bush, and then they put a group out together in a part where they can survive.
Huh.
Otherwise,
So
there'll only be one every time.
are they typically, so is it a female dominant situation? Because you said that she finds her own territory.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, so Nick had a question here. Nick said, is it the age or the sun exposure that varies the complexion of them, being a bright red to a dull pink?
They're a dull pink until 6 years. They're 6 years old before they get all the red in. So
Oh,
they're immature. They're that's pink, and then they're when they get red. By the time they're 6, they got all the red in. And then they're sexually mature at 6. That's
they're
how they
little
start out.
dinosaurs. So how old is this chick that we're
They're
looking
yeah.
at right here?
Oh, probably less than a week. When they
Okay.
hatch, they're all pink, and the blob is he's blob because you see it right there. There's a difference between the newly hatched chick and the other one. There's 5 days difference.
That's amazing.
So, but then you can see how it's just a pink thing, and by the time they're 4 days old, they turn gray. And when I pulled
Okay.
Blob out, he was just coming up on 4th days, and he was covered with ants. So I came outside anymore. So I brought him in and hand raised him. Uh, but no, he was great. I used to have sulcata tortoises in the yard. He'd go like he was hunting. We'd walk around the grass and whack the tortoises. Tortoises weighed about 80 pounds, so I wasn't going to be doing any harm.
Oh.
So
So
no,
how so this is, this would be just 4 days difference. Are they, when you're hand, so if you have to hand feed a hornbill, you're not getting KT exact, I mean, what are we talking about as far as hand feeding is concerned?
no chopped up pinkies and beef heart. And at the San Diego Zoo, I used their protocol when I first bought Blob in. I called Pat Whitman. She was in charge of that there at the zoo. And she gave me what they do. They would skin the mice and feed them the mice with no skin on it. And then
Mhm.
later on, they feed them the skins. Who skins them in the wild, right? The male catches a mouse, you can eat it just the way it comes. You know, he's going to skin it for you. So I didn't worry too much about skin it. I would the mice also I would cut up. But, they, I didn't want to choke somebody to death, so I'd cut the frozen mice, a mouse, medium-sized mouse, probably cut it pieces, and then feed it to it that way.
Hmm. So Lori asked here, how long do they live?
50 or 60 years in captivity.
Okay.
San Diego Zoo had a female still producing, and she was 45. So
Wow.
in the wild, they probably less, 30, 40 years probably.
Okay. Um, so Carrie Ellen down at Bird Gardens in Naples says that her sulcata needs a pet hornbill.
Indeed, it certainly does. I agree.
There we go. So Carrie, the hornbill's on its way. Dick, just put it in the mail. You're good. So when you look at the career that you've had, Dick, what, in your opinion, is your greatest accomplishment as an aviculturist?
Oh my. Oh, probably the fact I enjoy sharing what I know with people.
Mhm.
Some people early on, I had mentors when I started out. People like Francis Billy, Frank Miser, they would point me in the right direction, and so I'm happy to do that for other people. I
Yeah,
enjoy people
that's
enjoying birds.
that is, I mean, that's the win right there for me. I remember when I was reading your bio and that you had the red bends, and I remember talking to Walt Fry about red bends, and I said to Walt, "You need to share with people what you know." And we lost Walt suddenly, and unexpectedly, and all of that's gone with him. And I feel like that sharing is so critical. We whine about stuff like, oh, there's no young people who are in aviculture. I mean, TJ, and there's so many out there who have such potential, and it's people like you sharing that make it work. Claudia says, you're her mentor whether you like it or not.
She's an easy one to be a mentor for.
I bet she is. Um, so, um, so Nick says that you're easily approachable and you spread your knowledge to young aviculturists, and I think that is so. Well, thank you for that, because I think it's so important. You know, I used to go to parrot shows, and I would try to share information with little kids. I started looking like a creeper though, because I was talking to all these little kids at shows, and people I think were wondering what I was doing, and I was just trying to get them interested in birds. But it's so. Just to go back for 1 second, conservation with these guys, the Mabula ground hornbill. What kind of conservation efforts? How are they settled in the wild? What are their populations like?
There's about 1,500 left in South Africa now. The biggest issue is, of course, the habitat. They're taking land for farms, and you can't blame people. You got to eat. Some of them get shot. The males see the reflection of the farmhouse window and break the glass out, so the farmer's not for much of that. So they get shot for that. I think they got them beyond the point where somebody thinks that their beaks are some important ivory medical thing. So I don't think they're killed anymore for their and stuff. But it's mostly the lack of habitat. In Africa, nobody's building them a nest box 8 feet high, so they got 5-year-old ancient tree that's got to be big enough to be they could have a hollow in it for them to go into. So there's not as many of those as there used to be.
Yeah.
But they're I think they're it's been that same population for about 10 years anyway.
Mm-hmm. So the ground hornbill project, Mabula ground hornbill. Can you explain, tell people a little bit about that project?
Which one?
Mabula. Yeah.
Yeah. They monitor in the wild, and since there's 2 eggs, they'll take generally the first egg, the other one for the parents, and then when they get, they'll hand feed them and keep them in groups of themselves. They get a large enough group, and when they've had 6 or 8 months of hanging around the bush and learning things in the wild, then they'll relocate that whole group together to a different part of the territory where they don't have any anymore. Mm-hmm. So then they seem to get along fine that way.
Interesting. So is there anything people can do?
Otherwise, they don't get.
Is there anything people can do to help support?
They have a website. I'm sure they'd be happy with donations for sure. And they're putting nest boxes up now in the trees, and I have some place to nest besides looking for a hollow log.
Oh. Okay. So are they using the information that aviculturists have figured out about nest boxes and things like that? There's that thing that happens that's great when conservation looks to aviculture to help them succeed. Is that happening in this population?
Well, I'm sure it must be, because I've met Lucy Kemp. I'm sure she's been out in San Diego to give a talk. And of course, her father wrote the book on hornbills. They have to learn from what the zoos are doing. And it was my struggle to try to get them to breed the first time. Everybody's doing something different, and some things work, and some things different, and some things wouldn't work for anybody else. But it was the guy in South Africa doing what he told me to do is what saved it for me. It was takes a couple of sheets of ply with the nest box, and then you had to replace the front of it about every 2 years. They hammered the front of all of it, and they had to put a new front on it, but that was worth it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So Nick put a link in the chat for it's groundhornbill.org.za. So if people are interested in learning more about that, Douglas says great information. They're into parrots, but they're not hornbills because they live in the Great White North. But we hang out with them anyway, and we might be coming to visit and stay. But yes, he said great information. So again, I appreciate your sharing of information, Dick, and that you agreed to be on. I know people probably don't know a lot about hornbills, and this is an amazing introduction. So I want to thank you very much. And is words of wisdom for young aviculturists out there?
Yeah, don't give up. Don't give up. Somehow you'll make it work. Don't give up.
Absolutely. But again, I want to thank you, and we will. I'm sure I'll see you around. The ASA conference is coming up. I know we have Nick's got the information on that. The ASA conference is in Shreveport, Louisiana. It's their 19th annual educational conference, October 29th to November 1st. I believe Carrie Ellen's going, and a lot of great aviculturists will be there. And I don't know, maybe TJ's going to go. So it's asatv.org, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, asabirds.org. I mean, asabirds.tv. And then we also have the American Federation of Aviculture, AFA, conference coming up. That is September 3rd to the 6th in Raleigh, North Carolina. So unfortunately, they're too far apart, but you could just hang out on the road and look at birds, check out facilities on your way, go to AFA, then drive down to Shreveport. I think that's an idea. Carrie, you should do both. Carrie's going to both. So, and Adrian might be able to make it. Of course, Carrie's going to both. Carrie just drives, she's on the road all the time. So, and Adrian's going to try to make it. So it'll be great. But definitely, TJ says you better be going, Dick. I don't know. Sounds like some tough words from that youngin.
Well, I know it. Normally I'm always there, but I always do a Day of the Dead party every year, and that looks like it's on Day of the Dead. So who's?
I don't know. We might have to change when it is.
Well,
we'll get in touch with you. We'll handle that. But all right. Well, thanks again, Dick, and I'm sure I will see you around. And everybody, thank you for joining us. And
my pleasure. I had a good time.
It was fun. And it just, I got to tell you, it makes my heart feel good when you talk about sharing that information, because I'm a big fan of, if I know something and I think it'll help you, I'm going to tell you. It's, why not pass that information on and pass on that passion?
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
So next week we'll have, we're not going to have a live stream. We're going to rebroadcast Rescue Done Right. That's the presentation I did on the Rockstar Tour from last year. Just so you know, when we do those trivia events, we're on the road. We will try to include your live audience, and hopefully we can get you guys doing some trivia too. So you got to follow the tour. We will be live on the Rockstar Rescue Tour page. So thank you again, you guys. And thanks, Nick, as always. Even when Nick is down and out and not feeling great, he still is here on Friday nights to make this look good. So, all right, everybody, have a great week, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.